All right, hello and welcome to Kivumbi 2017. This is the last part of the show coming to you from 10 to 11. It is the political segment where we get to speak to the people behind the politics. And this evening, we truly are speaking to people behind power. And I'm just going to introduce them in 1 minute. My name is Joe Ageyo. Now, my panel here, Norman Magaya, CEO, NASA. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I also have David Mirari, who is the vice chair of the Jubilee Party. Some people call it Jubilee. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Before I get into this corruption conversation, there's been a lot of fight about the judiciary. What's going on? I mean, the other day, they also called it Court Bandia. Now you are saying that their courts are owned by NASA. What's really going on?
You want to go?
I asked you, David.
Oh.
You're the accuser.
No, I think we have a problem with institutions which are supposed to be independent and which we are finding are bending over to the whims of political pressure sometimes. Mm-hmm. And even as we tackle your topic on corruption, we should also interrogate some of those institutions as three separate entities: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and what each one of them, the roles they're supposed to play in the fight against corruption. In the case of the cases brought up by the opposition, it's strange that we're finding like our issue is not with the entire judiciary per se, but with some specific judges. We have the case of Odunga, who has prosecuted 38 cases sent by NASA, represented by Orengo, and they all find in favor of Orengo. And then we see the paternal and whatever relationships. But so we have an issue with that.
Some people say that distinguished judges got several international awards.
We have no issue with that, and a distinguished judge should be able to disqualify themselves, particularly when they have ruled on an issue of a similar nature before. And when it's brought before them, even if he's appointed as part of the panel by the Chief Justice, he should have the temerity to disqualify themselves purely on that basis.
No, Norman, have you captured the judiciary this time, and particularly particular judges, as David says?
It is actually strange, the allegations being made by Honorable Mrade. For one, Senator Orengo actually has lost more cases before Justice Ozunga than any other judge. That's a fact he doesn't know. Two, we've not filed the 38 cases as he alleges. I've been the one swearing affidavits for all our cases.
I said the cases Orengo has appeared before Odunga.
And it's not true. I will give you the case of KPMG. The file was before Justice Odunga. Jubilee came and said, we don't wish you to hear this case. Just last week you decided another case of ballot papers. And Odunga said, it doesn't have to be me. I find no reason to recuse myself. But in the interest of justice, let the file go to another judge. And we went to Justice Chacha Mwita. We were heard and we lost the case. We never complained. I think the discomfort of Jubilee is not really the kind of allegations they are laying before the judges. Their discomfort is rather the loopholes that we established, have sought judicial interventions, and most of those loopholes which gave a leeway for a manipulation of election processes that have been consistently been sealed by the judiciary. And our courts are quite vibrant after the 2010 Constitution. They are completely invoking the authority and completely rubber stamping their powers. So that if you go to court with frivolous grounds, vexatious suits, your suits will be thrown out. But we have deliberately undertaken intense research and investigation before we go to court. And before we go to court, our cases normally go through a series of panels to make a decision whether we go.
To be fair, I think it's very important to ask yourself this question. The public interest. And number two, the timelines. Why is it that NASA is going every other day setting up roadblocks? Today, just today, they're talking about another case of the EVITs. These are a tender that was done and done before. They're talking about the law that was passed in Parliament about the voter identification and the complementary system. Since it was passed in Parliament, they have never gone to court. Why now, when we are 3 weeks away from the general election, if they're honest with themselves and they had an issue with that legislation by Parliament, there was enough time for them to go and prosecute that case. But because now they've gone to the ballot one, there is a way that the IBC has accepted to abide by the finding of the court and to even retender.
They've also appealed today.
They've appealed, but they issued a statement saying, we are law-abiding. We're going to go with the judgment. The appeals are several. Then they come up with another one today, now challenging the identification of the voter. It has to be biometric and no backup. Nobody works without a backup plan, without a backup system. They're in court already.
That is not true.
And why now? I think, to be fair, Magaya,
David, that is not the genesis of the suit.
are
I think
you people, no, let's be very clear here.
Serious
Are
misapprehension
you
of facts.
alive to the limited time left? Or are you just interested in putting
Don't you sit
roadblocks
somewhere,
along
Norman,
the
and
way?
say, well, we have very little time.
Joe, the dogma here is that we are not just preparing for any kind of election. We are preparing for an election that is consistent with Article 86 and 138 of the Constitution. And those are the principles and standards that we must aspire to meet in this election. He's saying we are insisting that we must have biometric verification. That is not the case. They passed a law, albeit in a very hurried way, that was not properly interrogated. What we are seeking is clarity from court. This complementary system has not been defined. What is it? It is even in the interest of the Commission, okay, that this complementary system is clearly defined.
What about the time?
When technology fails, what happens?
What about the time? The fact that we have 28 days to the election.
It has no implication on the 8th of August. We are a political coalition that cannot afford to give Jubilee a single extra minute to continue.
Gentlemen, I want us to go to corruption.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the judiciary in a moment.
No, he said a point which I must respond to.
Yes, as you respond.
About the legislature passing. In Parliament, Joe, the majority have their way, the minority have their say. And this so-called tyranny, which they talk about, it is the people of Kenya who gave the coalition of the TNA Europe, the now Jubilee, the numbers. And that is how you decide how to prosecute your agenda in Parliament.
But he makes a point that probably is interesting, that, hey, we said there will be a complementary system, there will be some sort of backup, as you say.
They have no room for that. It is either biometric or nothing.
No, let me just make the point that there is a backup system, but the truth is no one knows what it is. Like, it's not been defined.
It's manual. It is defined.
No,
that there's a register.
It's not defined.
And you come in. If the biometrics are not working, is your name there? Is this you? Where's your ID? Can we see you? Are you dead?
You see, Joe, that complementary system says that the Commission shall establish a complementary system that is accountable, verifiable, transparent. And those are the things we need to define. This complementary system they are talking about, how is it going to be verifiable if it is money? How is it going to be accountable? These are the questions that must be resolved so that during the election
in fact,
we don't
this is the only second election we are doing biometrics. Before that, it always used to be manual.
It's not the second one. The last one, you failed all equipments.
And when they failed,
what
happened?
Okay, gentlemen.
You know what you
did? We moved to manual when they failed.
Let me get
you
back.
know what you did with manual.
All right, let me get back to corruption, gentlemen. And we're going to have some sound bites here of what the politicians have been saying out there about corruption even before we go to the discussion.
Kama iko maneno hiyo mtuulize sisi. Wacha kwenda kugombanisha watu wengine wadogo huko chini. Every time an officer unearths a problem in his ministry, unaambia step aside.
It would be wrong for God coalition to be just demanding and asking the President Uhuru Kenyatta to either sack the CS and the PS or ask them to resign. In fact, the first person who should resign because he has failed to lead the country is President Uhuru Kenyatta, including his own government.
Honorable Duale and Honorable Murkomen were the ones who were used to lobby members to withdraw their signatures when I had a motion.
Ndugu yangu Duale, ndugu yangu Murkomen, wao ndio walinipatia pressure ya kutosha kuniambia toa kidole chako kwa hiyo motion ya Ketera. Na jana wakati nilipoona ya kwamba wao wako kwa saga hii, kumbe walikuwa na interest. Nataka niambia Wakenya pole sana kwa sababu mnaongozwa na corrupt people.
This is not a government of corruption, and we are not going to facilitate corrupt people by this transaction.
Time for this parliament to unmask the people behind Anglo leasing who have been hidden for a long, long time.
No cent of Kenyans earned through hardship and tax payment shall be paid to shadowy, faceless, and unknown characters commonly described as Anglo leasing.
All right, so gentlemen, we have been talking about corruption. In fact, one friend of mine called it a merry-go-round. Everybody has something to say about corruption, but we don't see anything happening with regard to fighting corruption in this country. David, you go first.
There's been demonstrated by the president for the first time. He has 6 cabinet secretaries to step aside based on pure allegations. No case, no convictions, no nothing. 6, and he never rehired them. All right? That is action. Number 2 is the case of the cattle calling the pot black. Because when you look at the people talking corruption here, they have corruption cases. In fact, all the NASA principals, all of them, without exception, have corruption cases and allegations. And they're standing here telling us about corruption. Triton was Raila. The maize was Raila. We can go Japan Embassy. We can go Goldenberg. We can go, you name it. So I think it is up to us as Kenyans to interrogate whether facilitation is corruption. My friend here knows, in Europe, facilitation fee in Germany is tax deductible. In America, they have lobbyists who lobby for projects. But here, you have some guys in Europe paying off Kina Chris Okemo, and then nothing happens to them, but Chris is supposed to be interrogated. That is a corrupt act. I think they need to define for us what they understand
what about people
by corruption.
What about people who say that Jubilee has been in power for the last 4.5 years?
Right.
You talk about all those people who have been mentioned.
Right.
Doesn't it sound strange when people who are in government are also complaining that there's corruption?
That's a good thing. If people in government are complaining, they are
about
saying...
the opposition.
Even about themselves, even about their site. You saw them. It is to suggest that something drastic needs to be done. We know the president wants to do it. We know there are institutions that are charged with the execution of their mandate. The EACC, they've done their job maybe. It goes to the DPP. He's supposed to prosecute. But he needs to have the full body of evidence. The DCI, they're supposed to investigate properly so that the case can stand on its feet in court. The judiciary, everybody is taken there, they're given bond, they're given bail, they walk.
Okay, let me come to you.
And it's business as usual.
No, man. David says the opposition has no moral authority to talk about corruption, and yet the opposition says, well, we are the government in waiting.
You see, if there is one person who should never talk about corruption, it's the president and his Jubilee Brigade. They have presided over the most corrupt regime in the history of this country. And it starts with the president himself. His own family doing business with the government in compromising manner, talk of the Ministry of Health scandals, talk of Koto Housing that is doing the police housing project, talk of CEMEX that is doing the police housing projects, all of them having their headquarters at Clay House. Who owns Clay House on Thika Road? This is institutionalized corruption. And what the president did when he submitted the list to Parliament, he knew he was acting in breach of the law. That EACC, after investigations, is supposed to submit its report to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly is supposed to adopt that report. Then it goes to the Director of Public Prosecution. But the president did not even officially receive the report from the persons mandated to forward that report to Parliament. He clandestinely obtained that report from the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, edited some names deliberately, and we were able to demonstrate that there were names that were edited from that list for purposes of covering up people who were not supposed to go there.
But he did ask people from his cabinet.
And then it is not just enough to ask people to step aside. That's window dressing. There must be actual action that people are taken to court.
By who?
That investigations are done before people are taken to court. Evidence is adduced and prosecutions are undertaken.
By who?
What have we seen? The CSS who are taken to court, most of them on very flimsy counts and charges that cannot really stand the test of our criminal justice system. So you cannot blame courts when they throw out these charges. Secondly, you cannot be in government with full authority. You have sworn to protect the constitution of this country. And part of our legislative nature is such that all laws derive the authority from the constitution. So the president cannot start lamenting that there are people in opposition who are corrupt, yet nothing has been taken to bring these people before court and prosecute them.
The president says he's done what he could do.
What he's supposed to do.
No, the president actually has done nothing. He went before the whole nation and asked, "Munataka nifanye nini?" Literally, the president gave up on the war on corruption.
No, Joe.
It was an admission.
I think it's my turn now.
Okay, David.
I think I need to respond to him.
Yes, David, go ahead.
The president has done what he's supposed to do. The other institutions, starting with the same judiciary, have failed to do what they're supposed to do. The DPP, the EACC, the DCI. That's what he just said. But I need to go back to his original point. The president has never been associated with corruption. I can associate Raila with scandals of corruption. I can associate Musalia with it, and there is evidence to that effect. I can associate their financiers, Jim Wanjege, and allegations. The president himself. No. Let's be very clear about this. There is nothing in the law of this land that says the president's family, brother, sister, or whatever, cannot engage in business, cannot do business with the government. The issue should be, was due process followed? Did they tender? Did they win? Did they supply? Did they deliver? Was it to the specs of the award?
One of them was for vulnerable women.
Which one?
Where the sister was said to have tendered.
Which one?
The Afia House one.
Yeah.
Afia House, it's a company corporate body which supplied. And if you check, they did. They actually supplied. These guys, most of the time, they were doing air supply. These ones were actually delivered. The houses he's talking about, you have seen them, Joe. They are here in Ruiru. They have been built. If we were talking about air supply, that's a different thing. But if somebody has delivered as per the specification, what stops you from doing business because you happen to be the sister or the brother of the president? Nothing.
I think, David, you are talking as though you don't live in this country. You are saying other institutions are supposed to play their part.
Yes.
When you are waging the war against corruption, you go dismantling the very institution that is charged with the mandate to fight corruption. What happened? Mumo Matemu, Keino, and the other commission, they were all coerced to step down. They were promised ambassadorial positions in order to step down. There is only one person who has the authority to appoint ambassadors in this country, and that is the president. Such an undertaking can only have come from the president.
So you cannot emasculate the circumstances under which
you had your time. Let me have my time.
Step down. No, but you cannot.
Let me have my time. You will rebut.
You know the circumstances
you will rebut.
that led to them being required to step aside.
David, let him finish.
Not at all. So you cannot undermine the very institutions that are supposed to fight corruption, and then you go ahead and say that that you are fighting corruption, yet the very institutions are being dismantled and undermined. Two, you are saying that the president cannot be associated with the corruption.
Give me one.
There is a systematic manner.
One example. I have given you four for Raila.
You cannot lead.
Give me one.
You cannot lead. The president's
Give me one scandal the president has been associated with, which is corrupt. I have given you four for Raila.
Who perpetuated the 9 billion computer error? If it is
there was no error. There was no error. It was a fabrication.
Secondly, Kenyans elect only one person as the head of state. And if you are presiding over a government that is systematically engaging in endemic corruption, then the buck stops with the
I
president.
think this guy
it's not for the
is
president to come and
being
stop
economical with the truth. He
Then
knows about the three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And we have an activist judiciary right now. They're issuing freedom and bonds and whatever, left, right, and center, even murder cases. It is a product of the 2010 Constitution. He knows about the separation of power. He knows who is supposed to do what. The president is only actually supposed to execute what the judiciary has done. The judiciary is supposed to implement the law as passed by parliament. So, are you telling me the president can wake up one morning and sack the chief justice?
Okay, Norman, but David,
he can't.
Just a minute, Norman. But in 2013, Jubilee, that time seeking to get into government, made a certain promises in the fight against corruption. In fact, one of the pillars was called Uwazi. I remember clearly, actually, one of the promises was to give the EACC prosecutorial powers, for example, which 4 years later has not happened. So there are specific things like that.
Because it is fought all the time by them. Whenever the president tries to move, they put roadblocks. What the president has done for the EACC is to develop capacity. No, let's be very, very clear. What is the role of the executive? The president's role is to give the EACC capacity. He has done that. About giving them prosecutorial powers, that is the role of the other agencies of government, like parliament, to pass a law. They also talk about the independence.
Where Jubilee has a majority.
No. They talk about the independence of the director of public prosecutions. Meaning, you cannot just wake up one morning and give the EACC the power to prosecute. You'd be infringing on the Constitution.
But it was a promise,
You would have to amend the Constitution,
It was a promise, David.
You would have to amend the Constitution to be able to do that. That's it. And some of these amendments are not only two-thirds requirements, some of them are referendum. It's not as easy as ABC.
You know, David, you can try to deceive the country, but you can only do so for that long.
How?
One, corruption prosecution starts with investigations.
Right.
Boynet is an appointee of the president.
Yes.
The institution of the police, therefore. However, the fact that the Constitution says that it's supposed to be independent, but has a strong presence of the state. The director of criminal prosecution, Muhoro, is an appointee of the president. The DPP simply receives an investigations file and makes a decision whether to prosecute or not. If the investigations are shoddy, there is no way the DPP is going to successfully prosecute these cases. Two, whenever the president has wanted legislation to go through parliament, the president has used his powers to ensure that these legislations are passed. And examples abound. The Security Laws Amendment Act that was rammed in Parliament
when you are pouring water on the Deputy Speaker.
Through force. The Election Laws Amendment Act that you did last year in December, whenever the president has wanted to have his way in Parliament. So you wonder why, if you are saying there is no sufficient legislation to ensure that we have an adequate war against corruption, why hasn't it been done? Thirdly,
I've just talked about capacity building.
Thirdly, there are scandals that you cannot talk about without talking about the office of the presidency.
Which ones?
Eurobond. Okay?
Good one.
Okay?
Yeah.
You cannot talk about Eurobond.
Good one.
Without talking about the role of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto.
And I like that one. I like that one.
Yes.
Because, Joe, it is on record. The Honorable Retired Prime Minister has been asked by the Minister for Finance to go to the Treasury for an account of how that money was applied. He refused. He has been asked by Parliament to come to Parliament with his claims to the Public Accounts Committee, headed by none other than their ODM MPs. He has refused. He has been asked by the EACC to take whatever evidence to substantiate those claims so that he can assist. In fact, it is a crime. If you know something about a Eurobond, for example, and you're failing to cooperate with the agencies, you are abetting a crime. The former Prime Minister then goes on a public platform and talks Eurobond. If I ask you, Magaya, if it is true that money from the Federal Reserve Bank never ended up in this country, that money was never applied to projects in this country, where is the evidence? And when you're told to go and get an account from the Minister for Finance, you refuse.
Let me give you the
answers. When you are asked by Parliament to go, you refuse.
Let me give you the answers.
When you are called by EACC to go, you refuse.
Let me give you the answers. Henry Rotich, CS Treasury, when asked where are the projects that were funded by this money, he said he was unable to identify specific projects that was funded.
So why did Raila refuse to go?
He even
calling
wrote,
the minister a junior person.
He even wrote to cabinet secretaries asking them to list projects that this money funded. None of the CSS made a return.
Then answer the question.
Just listen.
Why did Raila refuse to go for an explanation?
The Auditor General, a constitution office that is charged with the responsibility of auditing government books and ascertaining whether money can be accounted for or not, has also clearly stated in his report that the Eurobond funds cannot be accounted for.
Because you thought this one is coming to do the Nairobi-Mombasa duo carriageway. Why did your Prime Minister refuse to go to get an explanation from the Minister for Finance?
Rotich said he
Can you answer that question?
Rotich said he has uploaded
He's
documents.
evading the question, Joe.
Listen.
Why did he not go for an explanation? He has to answer that one.
Listen.
Why did he not go?
The Treasury uploaded documents on the website. Those documents were downloaded.
Answer that
analyzed.
question. Why did he not go?
It was not a question of Raila going
for
to
an explanation.
Treasury. No, not at all.
Higher. Why did he not go to Parliament?
If you have blown a whistle, there is corruption here. You allow investigating entities
gentlemen, will be back
and you are called by the same agencies to go and help them with the investigation. The EACC, you refuse to go.
We are taking a break. All right, we are taking a short break here. This conversation is just beginning. When we return, we'll talk about those cartels that are alleged to be somewhere in the opposition circles. Are they there? Are they not? We'll be talking about that. And also, we'll be seeing what the agencies, different agencies have been saying about this fight against corruption, because they are being blamed left, right, and center. Don't go away.
This is KTN News.
We hereby issue an order of certiorari